Okay, Thursday, 8th of May, 2025. So Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Thoughtful Thursday, philosophy and musings from life. Why don't prisoners find Zeus, Odin, or Osiris when they go to prison? Every now and then you hear about a prisoner going to prison and they discover Jesus, or discover other such famous names in religion and theology. Interesting. But then flip the script, because I instinctively like to be a little contrarian and think of the opposite, the inverse. Why don't prisoners find Zeus when they go to prison? Or Odin? Or Osiris from Egyptian mythology? Why not? And I kind of mean that as a bit of a sincere question, not to be flippant, but it's like, well, that's an interesting thing. And the answer ultimately is contemporary society, it's the culture, the world we live in today. You know, maybe prisoners 1,000 years ago, less likely. 2,000 years ago, quite likely. 3,000 years ago, yeah, I imagine so. In ancient Rome, ancient Greek, you name it, or ancient Egypt, or ancient Norse, or Norse time, Scandinavia, if paganism, as we know it today, we define it today, was the predominant, as it was the predominant religion back then, they would have discovered it. Discovered Odin, Zeus, Osiris, you name it. Makes sense. Just how today Christianity is the predominant religion, it's the culture, again, contemporary society. People discover it. And the culture is perpetuating these ideas, these notions, these concepts, talking about, let's say, Christian theology. Let's just keep it very broad and blunt. Perpetuating it through books, literature, you name it, the zeitgeist, the general thoughts and general ideas of the time, but no one's talking about this. The absolute minority, the absolute critical mass and the vanishing minority of people discussing this thing, or that thing over there, or that thing over there, because we never hear about it in the mainstream consciousness. It doesn't exist. But this thing, the vast majority of it think about it, or brought up in the realms and taught about it. It's social learning theory, really. Decades and generations have been talking about this, so it's the norm. Social learning theory, I did a video about this, and another video that just came to mind, but it'll come back to me, I'm sure. So it's the culture. Oh, that's it. Culture. Is culture a cult? I did a video about that as well. Is culture a cult? In a sense of, are you really thinking of yourself, or are you just perpetuating standards and norms that have been inculcated because of the predominant culture? And are you thinking for yourself, or just copying and pasting and reflecting what you've been taught and is being being shone like a light around you? But that's a whole other conversation. So then we look at this idea. Prisoners not discovering Odin, Zeus, or Osiris. Okay, it's not part of the culture. Okay, so what that means is the culture over time shifts. This exact location in the world, this, the what three words, that kind of stuff, attitude, longitude and latitude, that kind of situation. This location in the world, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 250, 300 years ago, 500, you pick a number, that many years ago was a complete different place and scenario. 1,000 years ago, this would have probably been a field or a forest. 2,000 years ago, not much different. So things change. Society, culture, zeitgeist, as I mentioned earlier, changes. So over time, culture shifts. And the underlying principle, why they don't find Zeus and Odin and Osiris, is understand the cultural shifts. Understand the zeitgeist of the time. Understand the cultural phenomena. Understand the standards, because morality is subjective. Understand the morality of the time, the laws, the culture, the place, the people. In a four-dimensional way, as in this place versus 100 years ago versus 100 years in the future. And you could say a three-dimensional place, as in 100 kilometers that way, 100 kilometers that way, 1,000 kilometers that way, or 1,000 kilometers that way. Things, at the same time, things would be different. The culture, the zeitgeist, what's acceptable, what is perpetuated, what's common sense. I had an interesting conversation elsewhere recently, about 2 weeks ago, about common sense. Even that is totally subjective and totally illogical. What's sense for me is not sense for you, and vice versa. And what's sense for me is not going to be what's sense for people 10,000 kilometers that way, nor people 10,000 kilometers that way. Complete two different directions, complete different worlds. And I want to do a video about this as well, actually, where genetics determines morality. But later. So it's the culture. Be aware of the culture that's being perpetuated and talked about around you. Is it constructive for what you want individually? To what extent is it constructive? To what extent does it help you get what you want? Ride the wave of culture to get what you want, or is it a wave that's crashing against you and challenging you? Interesting. Not to be confrontational, but to understand and have awareness of what you're dealing with over here versus over there, versus 10 years in the future versus 10 years in the past, how things have changed, to be socially adaptable, to be aware, to understand. And that means you make fewer mistakes. The fewer mistakes you make, the more efficiently you achieve your goals, or even the more efficiently you avoid pain as well. Both, again, the inverse, both are true. Interesting stuff. Be aware of what's happening culturally. Interesting. That's why prisoners today don't find Zeus, Odin, or Osiris, because it's not part of the culture. But then what is? And how do you handle it? Interesting question. But otherwise, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Subscribe for more, and you will see me tomorrow.